Hello, this is Amanda Freeman, and this is for our individual project for our conflicts resolutions class. I want to start by saying why I chose this chapter. And so I chose chapter 29 on the culture-based situational conflict model because it aligns with what I've seen a lot in my daily advocacy work and with tribal and indigenous communities. Conflict isn't just about surface level issues, it's shaped by identity, power, and safety. This model gave me the language to explain what I've experienced firsthand, and I think others should care too, because intercultural conflict isn't just something we study in theory. It happens in real time in our schools, courtrooms, and healthcare systems. If we don't account for culture, we risk misinterpreting the people that we claim to serve. So, for slide 3, what is the culture-based situational conflict model, also known as CBSCM? So the original CBSCM, created by Ting, Toomey, and Oatzell, focused on how cultural values shape conflict through orientation factors, situational features, and communication styles. It later evolved into CBSECM model, which goes a bit deeper. It looks at how conflict is shaped by multiple layers: macro factors like colonization and history, exo factors like policies and institutions, meso community norms, and micro level personal beliefs. Together, these layers help us understand how people enter a conflict, not just how they act in it. So first, slide 4, why this model matters. Misinterpretation of cultural behaviors, identity threats leads to silence or escalation, helps systems respond without bias. Those are the notes I have in the slide. But this model exposes the danger of misinterpreting cultural behavior. Here, the same woman is shown in two different moments. One image might look defiant. She's wearing a jacket that says Indian land not for sale. The other looks serene. Look, she's in regalia. She's at powwow dancing in mid-prayer ceremony even. But neither image really tells her full story or the full story of the moment. She's not either or, but she's both. The CBSECM reminds us that culture, identity, and lived experience might shape how we show up. And when systems don't recognize that, people get mislabeled, misunderstood, or punished even. Not for their actions, but for how others are perceiving their actions, or how they're perceived by others. So for slide 5, orientation factors, primary orientation factors. Orientation factors shape how we walk into conflict. So at the macro level, for like indigenous communities, it carries histories of colonization, betrayal by institutions. At the exo level, school systems and courtrooms often reflect majority norms that don't fit everyone. The meso level, traditions influence how communities expect people to speak or stay silent. And at the micro level, personal identity and concerns about dignity or saving face can determine whether someone avoids, confronts, or compromises. So in the slide, I added the graph that depicts those situations. If I were to really relate them to myself or how I envision it. For slide 6, situational appraisals. Situational appraisals are about how people read conflict based on what they've experienced and the context that they're in. Someone might react strongly to what seems like a small issue because of past situations where they were ignored or disrespected. If they're the only one in the room who shares their background or beliefs, that can shift the power dynamic and increase tension. This model helps explain that people respond the way they do for a reason based on their experience in those particular settings. It's shaped by the layers around them, and not just by the moment that's in front of them or that they are in. They react based on past situations. So this photo, it's a hard one for me to look at. This is a photo of, well, let me start first by saying this slide is for conflict processes. So, and then this photo is a photo of a mother searching for her daughter. I was with this mother for weeks. We were searching for her daughter. Her daughter's name was Wilma Acosta, and she disappeared in Portland. So this was taken while we were still searching for her daughter. She stood in front of people who failed her. She was calm and silent, and it was like the silence was louder than anything any of us could have said. She stood in front of the police that weren't doing their jobs, the authorities that were trying to make us stop, stood there and just was strong through it all. And I feel like this picture, it speaks for itself. So in our communities, holding an emotion during conflict is a form of strength a lot of times. It protects dignity, but if you don't know that, you might misread her silence as passive or indifference, or just kind of just confused, not really knowing how to read it. So CBSCM helps explain these differences and the different expressions of conflict, because not all resistance looks loud or aggressive, and not all grief looks the same either. Sometimes it just looks like a grieving mother that's just, she's so obviously in pain, but also you wouldn't be able to tell like how angry she is by looking at her. But she kind of just, she knows that conflict won't work in this situation. She knows that fighting back has failed over and over again, and she doesn't feel like her voice is creating something that's going to help make a difference. For slide 8, conflict strategies. People respond to conflict in different ways, not because of their personality, but because of history and safety, their experience basically. So avoidance might be the only safe option for someone who's been punished for speaking up. And confrontation might be a last resort for someone who spent years being dismissed. So CBSCM doesn't rank these strategies. It helps us understand them. And that understanding is what helps systems avoid re-traumatizing the people that they're supposed to serve. For slide 9, It's talking about the connection to fit stuff and crucial conversations. So these images, I believe, say it all. The red handprint symbolizes the silence forced on MMIP, missing and murdered Indigenous people or women. The rallies and posters above that show families demanding to be heard. So Fit Stuff explains how identity threats trigger survival instincts, silence, shut down, or fight. So crucial conversations add that people don't speak up unless they feel safe. CBSCM ties these ideas together. It shows how safety, identity, and culture affect everything, from who speaks to how they're heard. I've watched families fall silent in court, not because they didn't care, but because the space was never made for them. If we want true resolution, we have to create environments where people can show up fully without fear. And that's one thing that I fight for every day. So I think the reason that I use these two photos is because there's so many different ways of confronting these and having these crucial conversations. So one is to be silent, I guess, but and then one is to speak out. But the second photo, the one of the MMIP photo, I took both of these, but the one is representative of us not staying silent anymore. But I believe that this is just this can go in so many ways, and we can talk about it in so many ways. But this is what I got from Fit Stuff's, I have trouble saying his name, but from this portion of it. Slide 10, takeaways and what this model taught me. So, the biggest takeaway: conflict is rarely just about the topic, it's about what's not said, about safety, identity, and whether people feel seen. We can't keep using a one-size-fits-all approach like many do. We need to ask better questions, create safety for full identities, and stop assuming neutrality means fairness. This model doesn't have all the answers, but it's a better place to start, I think, especially if we want systems that truly listen. So I feel like we need to ask deeper questions, creating psychological safety, and letting go of assumptions. Real resolution requires space for full identity. And identity and safety are often ignored by systems. Culture shapes how people engage in conflict. And I think that this is all very, very relevant to our everyday lives, our everyday world. And I think it's a huge place to start when it comes to conflict and conflict resolution.